Hello and welcome. This is Precious, and in this training, we'll be going over Git and GitHub completely. This is going to be a pretty longer training because I aim to cover everything that you need to know about Git and GitHub in this video. So let's say this video is going to be one stone that will kill so many birds. Without much ado, let's get into it. Git and GitHub are used for source control management. GitHub is an online platform where you collaborate with other developers on your Git repositories. And why is Git important? First, it helps to manage changes to your files over time. Imagine you're developing an application and you've been making changes to your file so many times. Git is going to help you track all those changes over time. And to the second point, revert to previous versions. So imagine making so many changes and being able to revert to any change that you've made at a previous time. You could even revert to a change you made, 7 months ago. That's the importance of Git and GitHub. Also, it helps you to compare differences and see who made changes. Like, GitHub is a collaborative social platform, and all sorts of developers can work together on a project. So if a lot of people are working together on a project, it is important for you to know who made so changes and who broke the code. And like we said, it helps you to collaborate and assign tasks to others. So let's leave the theory. I love practicals, right? Let's get to it. The very first thing you need to begin with Git and GitHub is to install Git. And to install Git, just search for Git on Google, and on your first results, click on download for Windows. You can download the Windows setup depending on your system type, 32-bit or 64-bit. Click on any of the download link to begin the standalone installer. I have installed Git on my system previously because I've been using it, but the installation is pretty straightforward. Just download any one depending on your system bit type and run through the installation by clicking next, OK, agree to all the terms and conditions. You know the drill already. And when you're set, the next thing you need to know is Git is going to install a lot of files on your computer, and one of them is called Git Bash. And what does Git Bash do for us? Git Bash is a command, is a terminal, just like the terminal you can see on my screen. This terminal is command prompt, but Git has its own terminal called Git Bash. And for the purpose of this training, and because we are working with Git, I think we should work with Git Bash. So, to begin, let's open up our Git Bash. So click on the Windows icon and search for Git Bash. And there you have it. You should have it on your computer too. Open it up and let's see what we have here. So as you can see, it's pretty much like what you have with command prompts. It's a terminal and you can put in your prompt. The very first thing you need to do when you have your Git Bash open or your command prompt, remember I said you could use Git Bash or you could use command prompt, but because of this training and because we are working with Git, I just feel it would be nice for us to use, the Git terminal, right? The first thing you need to do is to do your global configuration. And the first configuration we will be doing is putting your name into the application. And how do you do that? You say Git Config Global user.name is equal to. So if you're going to use your full name with a space in between, you have to use an apostrophe. Precious Iriewo. It's up to you to use your full name or you could use just your first name. I like to use both. Then you click enter, and that has been recorded. The other Git configuration we need to do is for your email address, and almost the same command, Git Config Global user.email so you put your email right there, enter, and now you've been able to set your global username and your global email in your Git application. In the future, you would see where all this come to play. The next thing we need to do is to set our default branch. To set your default branch in Git, you also use the command I'm typing on your screen. Please, I hope you're typing with me and you're also you're taking notes. It is very important. There are a lot of commands. Git config -- global init default branch. I like to call my default branch master. You can decide to call yours main. You could call it main. I like to call my own master. So what have we done? We've set a global username, Precious Ireho. You've set a global user email, and you've set your default branch called master or main or whatever it is you've decided to use. The next thing you need to know is how to get help with Git. There are two ways to get help with Git. The first one is to say Git help and the command name. Config is a command, so let's see the help for config. And it's going to open your browser, showing you a page, a manual page that has been installed on your computer, telling you about config. As you can see, Git config, get and set repository or global options. So it's showing you all the options or everything you can do with Git config. And if you observe properly, we've used some of them already. And which one did we use? I think we used Git config, username, and email. Let's not waste too much of time. Let's go back to our application. The other way to get help with Git is to say Git, then the command -h. Oh, sorry, I was typing in the wrong place. The other way to get help is to say Git config -h, then enter. This is going to show you the usage of Git inside of the terminal. Instead of taking you to the browser, you will get your results here. This, to me, is like the favorite one for me because it's easy for you to see everything without leaving the terminal page. Our terminal is getting pretty full. So, to clear your terminal, you use the clear command. It's going to clear every command that you've entered previously. And that is it. Our terminal page has been cleared. Now, it's time for us to work with Git proper. Remember we said Git is a command line tool that makes it possible for you to collaborate and for you to track changes in your file. Now, let's assume that you have a file. You've been working on a program, developing a website, something, and you pretty much have a code base. I have this already. It's just a simple recipe site. Let me open it in the browser. And as you can see, we have recipe for baking. This is a simple recipe for baking chips or cakes or whatever it is. It's just, I pulled it up from the internet. The next thing you want to do is you want to be able to track changes to this file, because currently we can't do all that. And for you to do that, you have to cd or be inside of that folder. And how do you get to that folder? Let me show you a pretty nifty trick. Go back to the command line tool, go back to your file explorer, and inside of that folder that you want to track, just click on this address bar here and type Git Bash and see what happens. And as you can see, Git has already taken us inside of that folder. That is to say, we are currently inside of the folder that we want to track, where all our codes are. And without wasting much time, the first command you would use when you want to track your codes is to initialize Git. And how do you initialize Git in that folder? You use Git init. Before I press enter, I want you to see something. So look at our folder. We only have 4 files, right? And there is no folder. Let me go ahead and click Git init to initialize Git. Git init. And as you can see, initialize empty Git repository inside of that folder. And let's check the folder again. And now we have a new folder, a hidden folder called Git. If you can't see this folder, just go on your computer, click on View, Show, and click on Hidden Items. And it's going to show you this folder. You can go into the folder to see what we have inside. As you can see, there are some other folders and files inside. To be honest, you have no business with this. The most important thing for you is to know that you have Git.git folder already in your folder. So I'm going to share this code with you so that you can use it to follow this training. The download link is going to be in the description, or you can use any other code that you have. So let's go back. Now that we have initialized Git on our folder, the next thing for us to do is to check the status. So you check the status to see the current state of your folder, to see what is currently happening with your repository. Untracked files will not be monitored by Git. That is, files that you'd have refused to track will not be monitored by Git. But when they are tracked, Git will know when changes are made to those files. So now that we've used Git init, Git can tell you what changes have been made to those files, and you can revert to previous versions. So let's check Git status and see what it does for us. Git status. And as you can see, when you use Git status on branch master, remember I called my branch name master, it says not commit yet, and you have untracked files. You have untracked files. The first one is staff salaries, index, logo, and recipe. Nothing added to commit. So if you check it, you see that we have the same files here. Git is now telling you now that these files are not currently tracked, but they are already working files. So we call those ones working files. When they are not being tracked yet, they are called working files. Now, for you to track a file, the first thing you need to do, let's assume we want to track this recipe.html file, right? To track it, all you need to do is to type in the following command: git add, then the file name recipe.html. And let's see what happens. As you can see, we've added the file to be tracked, but we can't tell what is happening. So let's use Git status to see the status of our folder again and know which files are being tracked and which file is not being tracked. As you can see, Git is telling you there is a new file that is being tracked called recipe.html. Remember, we just added it, but the other files are not being tracked because we have not added them to Git to track them. Remember, we just did Git add recipe.html to track only the recipe.html file, and that is why Git is telling you now that that is the only file I'm tracking. I'm not tracking the other ones. What if you've decided not to track this file anymore? You want to remove it from being tracked. What you need to do is just to type in the following command: git remove cached, and the file name recipe.htm. This command is going to remove the recipe.htm file from being tracked. Enter. And you see it says removed recipe.htm. Let's do git status again to be sure that it has been removed. And as you can see, we are back to where we were before. Untracked files, recipe.htm is back with the other files. None of them is being tracked. But then, what's the purpose of having Git? Is it not to track your files? But then there is a problem. And what is the problem? In my folder, I have staff salaries. And staff salaries is not a file I want the public to see. Think about it. You don't want the whole world to know how much you're paying your staff, right? So we need to do something. We need to remove this file from being tracked by Git. And how do you do that? You use a file called .gitignore in your project folder. Git ignore folder helps you to ignore files from being tracked. Git ignore folder removes files from being tracked in your Git repository. So when a file is inside of the Git ignore, it will never be tracked. So to remove a file from being tracked, you would create a new file in that folder, your working folder, called gitignore. Git ignore. Git ignore. Then you click on enter. Yes. This git ignore file is what you would use in removing files from being tracked by Git. So let's open it up and make some changes to it quickly. So let me drag it to Notepad. First, let me put a comment. This file is for hiding files from being tracked by Git. And which file do we want to hide? We want to hide the staff salaries. We don't want it to be tracked by Git. Save, and let's go back to our terminal. Now that we are on the terminal, let's do the Git status again and see what happens. As you can see, previously we had staff salaries being tracked here. It was showing, but after we've added the git ignore file, we can't see staff salaries anymore because it is now being ignored by Git. It will never be tracked anymore. Instead, we now have our git ignore file in there. But there is something you need to know. It is also not good for you to track your git ignore file. So we also have to hide the git ignore file. And how do we do that? Yeah, you got it. We have to add the git ignore file inside of the git ignore file. Interesting, right? Let's save. And let's do our git status again. And as you can see, we can no longer track our staff salaries because it was inside of the git ignore file. And also, we added the git ignore file and now we can't see it anymore. So the purpose of this is it helps you to, people won't know if you have files that you're hiding. People get more dangerous when they know you're hiding things. So with them not seeing your git ignore anymore, they can't tell if you're hiding anything or not. So you are now left with folders that you want anybody to see and collaborate or work with you on. So let's get to it. Now, the next thing is, let's clear the terminal. It's getting pretty long again, right? Let's go back. So now I've cleared the terminal. But remember, we can't be adding our files one by one. Imagine previously we were doing git add and I had to do recipe.htm. What if you have 20 files? Do you want to do all that one by one? I don't think so. So there is a way for you to add all files, and there are 3 ways to do that. The first one is git add --all, or git add capital letter A, or git add period or dot. I prefer this one because it just looks pretty simple. So when you type git add dot, all the files in that folder will be tracked by Git. All changes will be noted. So let's press enter. And let's use Git status to check the status of the folder. Please, I hope you're doing all this with me because it helps with your muscle memory. When you type with me and you follow my commands and my instructions, you will be able to remember things clearly, and it even gets better if you're doing the commands with me and you are also taking notes. So Git status. As you can see, Git is now telling us that we have new files and they are being tracked. It's now tracking the index.htm, tracking the logo.png, and tracking the recipe.htm. Now, I want you to understand something. What we've done here is called staging. You've now staged your files. That is, your files are in a container, like a cage or a pen, whereby anything you do to them, Git is going to track it. Any changes you make, Git is going to track it. Let's do an illustration. So I open up the folder and I open Notepad. Let me edit the recipe, one of the recipe or the recipe. So I'll drag this to Notepad. Okay. Now this is much. Let me use the index so that I want simple test. Yes. So now I'm going to add a test at the bottom here. I'll say this is an initial change, but nothing to tell. I'm going to save this. Now that I've saved this, let's see what Git is going to tell us. Git status. Can you see what has happened? Git status is telling you that these are files that you need to commit. These are files that have been added to be tracked, but you've also made a change to the index.htm. I don't know if you understand. Git is telling me now that I have just made a change to this file. And this is the change. This is an initial change, but nothing to tell. Right in the staging, we can restore the file to the previous state or return it to the working category. And how do we do that? Git restore index.htm. Oh, sorry. I used a comma. Index.htm. Git restore index.htm. Let's try the Git status once more. You see, the modification has not been noted because Git has erased it. Let me drag that file back to the Notepad. Let me open it back in Notepad and let's see if that's correct. As you can see, the change I made has been removed by Git. And that is the importance of Git. Remember, I made a change and yet I was able to revert to the previous version. That is what Git restore does for you. Now, remember I told you, when you use git.add, that is when you use this command, git add dot, you move all your files to a cage or a pen or like an holding area. So what you do in the holding area is Git helps you to track any changes you make to the files in the holding area. And when you're happy with the changes you've made, the next thing for you is to commit it to Git. And what does commit means? Commit means that you are going to take a snapshot of all your files at that particular time. So whatever change you made at that point before you commit it, Git is going to save it. It is now going to be like a milestone for you. So when you want to revert back, you can revert to a previous commit. So if you have 5 commits, that means you have 5 different stages of storage. And each storage will be storing different stages of your data. So let's assume on your first commit you added an image, on your third commit you added 4 images. Git will store everything and you can revert to the one with the first image and your files will be the way they were when you were at that stage. To make a commit, that is to take a snapshot of your file so that Git is going to record everything about that file at that particular time, all you need to do is to type git commit -m, then you type a message. I will call this is our very first commit. Enter. Check what the message is. The message says master root commit. It gives you an ID for the file. This is the ID with the message. This is our very first commit. And it's telling you 3 files changed and it has stored all the changes that we made to this file. So we have a snapshot of this file the way they were like this. That is, the way our files is like this, Git has stored everything. So even if we make a lot of changes, even if we delete this folder, even if we do all sort of things, Git already has it stored and it can always restore us back to this stage. Now, we've made a commit to our file. Let's assume that I decide to make a change again to the index file. Let me say, I just made this test after our first commit, then save. There is a new command that can help you to check what has changed from your last commit and now. And what is that command? It's called Git Diff. So this shows you what new changes have been added to your file from when you made your last commit and when after the work you've done on it. So if I make a commit now and I started working on the file like what we did, I made a commit, then I added a new test. Git Diff is going to help us to see the difference. So Git Diff, enter, and let's see what changes have been made. So after Git if, you see the difference was only on the index.html file, remember? And look at the previous test we had. Every cookie made, blah, 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 to seriously. Then look at plus. There's a plus here. Git is telling you that this plus was the new addition. I just made this test after our first commit. Was that not what I typed here? That is it. So Git is telling you that is the changes that you've made that has not been committed. So if we use Git status, it will tell you that there's a new change to that file. As you can see, it's telling you modified index.html, but it is yet to be committed. So let's use clear to clear our terminal again. While you are working, you will realize that there is no point trying to create a commit, trying to stage the file, so that is adding the files, then creating a commit. You can do everything at the same time, stage the file and commit at the same time. So let's do that. The command is this: git commit -a. This is going to add all the files to the staging area. Then -m, which is going to be the message. And let's call this is our second commit with changes. Enter, and it's telling you 1 file changed, 2 insertions. So Git has taken a snapshot again of the current state of our folder. Remember, we've done 2 commits now, right? So we have 2 stages that we can reset to or revert to at any time. But what if one day I got scared? I have my recipe.htm files, and this file was passed down to me from my ancestors. I don't want the whole world to see this file. I could do something. Remember from our class, using command line in terminal on Linux, we can remove that file entirely. And how do we do that? We say git remove recipe.htm. Before I press enter, I want you to see that we still have it here. You see, we still have recipe.htm. But if I press enter, that file will be removed. Let's go back. Let's refresh. Oh, it's even gone. See, I don't have it anymore because I have to hide the recipe. It's from my family. I don't want the whole world to see it. But after due consultation, I've been told that I can share it with the world. So why won't I share it? So we can bring it back by using git restore git restore recipe.htm. That's the name of the file. Let's check the folder. You see it's not there. I refresh it. I'm refreshing the folder. But let me go back to the terminal and press enter to see if we can get it back. And let's go back to the folder to see if our file is back. And voila, our file is back. So right now, the whole world can share in our joy by using our recipe. So now you can see how you can remove files from the Git terminal and also restore them in the same Git terminal. But there is something else that happened along the line. I was just informed that we shouldn't call this logo. We should call it Mama's logo because the recipe was made by Mama. So we have to put Mama right there, and it should be called Mama's logo and not just logo. So this brings us to the next thing. Inside of Git, you can rename files. And to rename a file, all you need to do is git move or mv, then the current name, logo.png, then the new name, Mama logo. So we want to change this basic logo to Mama logo. And let's check our folder. You see, the file has been changed from logo ordinarily to Mama logo. Now the next thing we need to do is, all this while we've been making so many commits. And how do we check all the commits that we've made? We are going to use a command called Git Log. So Git Log is going to show us all the commits that we've made. So Git Log, enter. And as you can see, from the very first time we started, our first commit was called "This is our very first commit." Then when we made changes, we now called it "This is our second commit with changes." And they are all in the master branch with their different commit IDs. But also, still using log for commit review, you can also see an easier log for the commits we've made, because this one looks pretty ambiguous. I mean, there's a lot of lines to check. So we could say git log dash dash one line, enter. And as you can see, very simple now, right? The first ID is just telling us this is our latest or second commit, and this was the first one we made, just 2 lines. Previously we had over 5 lines for the log, but using 1 line we have just 2 lines because we've only made 2 commits. And your commit will contain information about the author and the dates and the message for each of the commit, which you've seen already if you use Git log only. But Git log dash dash on one line is not going to show you all that, but it's just for you to see what is happening quickly. The next thing we can do is we can change the last message, and the last message was this is our second commit with changes, right? We can update this message. And how do we do that? You say git commit dash m, which is for message, and let's call this second commit deleted and restored a file. Did we not do that? Of course we did that. Sorry, we missed the first apostrophe here. Okay. Just a dash. Just a dash. So second commit, where we deleted, because you have to make it, make it easy for people to understand what you're saying. Where we deleted and restored a file, the recipe.html file, that was what we deleted and restore, and dash dash amend. So this is going to update the last message or the last commit message. And let's see it in action. So to be sure that this was changed, let's do git log dash dash one line. And as you can see, the message has changed from this is our second commit with changes to second commit where we deleted and restored a file. Also, if you want to see what really changed in your file, like you want to see an in-depth change or an in-depth history, you can use git log dash p. Pretty ugly, right? But it's going to show you all the changes you made for each commit. So this was our last commit. This was the message we added. And our first commit was when we added everything. So there was no changes. But this was what changed from the second commit. So you see the highlights on the first commit. And then on the second commit, this is only what we added. So that is it. And the terminal is looking ugly again. So let's get out of here. So you use Q to exit out of that place. Also, you can revert to a previous commit. Let's assume we want to revert back to this first commit. Currently we have 2 commits. Second commit where we deleted and restored a file. Let's assume we want to go back to the first commit. You have to copy the code and use Git Reset. Git Reset, then the code of that commit. Let me delete that. I have some extraneous elements there. Let me clear this page before we do that. Clear. So we use Git Reset. I hope I copied the right code. Then paste. So this is the code for our first commit. And I'm going to press enter. Please take note of the file. Look at everything that has changed. Mama logo, recipe. And let's see what happens when we go back to the first commit that we made initially. As you can see, on stage changes after reset, index.html, logo png. Let's see what happened. So the change we made inside of HTML should have been reverted by now. And that is pretty much all you need on Git commit and resetting. So on stage changes, let's use Git status to see what's up with our folder again. And as you can see, you have deleted logo PNG, modified index.htm, and you have an untracked file, mama-logo.png. So the reason why this logo did not change was because it is currently untracked. We've not added it to the Git staging area. So let's add everything to the Git staging area so we don't forget what we've been doing previously. Git add dot. And let's use Git status to ensure that all our files are being staged now. And as you can see, it has been staged properly, telling us that logo was changed to mama logo and index was modified. Now, the next thing you need to know is called branching. Branching in Git is very, very important. The reason why you need to branch is because most times it is not nice for you to work on your main file or your master file or on the master branch. Instead, you have to create a branch of that same code on another branch and work on it. Then when you are done, you merge all your changes together. What this means is like you have your code here, you copy all that code to another place on your computer, you make your changes, then you bring it back. That is what branching is. And branching is necessary because you can use it in fixing bugs. You know, when you have bugs or you want to add a new feature to your code, you can use branching to do that. So how do we create a branch? All you do is git branch, and the new branch name, let's call this new text. So we have a new branch called new text. For you to see all the branch you currently have on your Git, you say git branch. And as you can see, we have two branches now. We have master and new test. But master is the branch we are currently working on. And it's not nice because we want to make changes that we can add or merge to master later. So what you need to do is you need to switch. So let's switch to new test. And you do that by saying git branch, and the name of the branch you want to switch to new text. Enter. Oh, sorry. I was trying to create a new branch. To switch, you use git switch. You see why it's important to follow? I make mistakes and you can see it. Nothing is hidden. Then you use the name of the branch that was created that you want to switch to. So we are switching to new test. And as you can see, we've switched to new test. Let's see what branch we are working on currently. Git branch. And you see, we are now on new test. We are no longer on master. You know what that means? That means that all the files you have here, they are on your new test branch. And to confirm that, let's do something. I'm going to edit index.htm file and I'm going to say this branch is the new test branch, right? Save it. Take note. This folder now is currently new test branch. It's no longer master branch, and I've put the new test branch test inside of HTML so that we'll be able to know if I'm telling the truth or I'm lying. So let's go back. Now let's switch back to master. Then we'll open this file again. So git switch master. I'm going to the master branch. Enter, right? Let's go back to our folder. Open the test editor. This test was from the former one. See, I'm not going to delete anything. Just look at my cursor. I'm going to move this index file into the test editor, right? and let's see what happens. Now everything here is master branch, but this test was made inside of new test branch. So let's put this index here again, because this index is from master. Oh, sorry about that. We had some changes from the master branch then that we were yet to commit. So we have to commit. The master branch has to be, at optimal before we make those changes. So right now we are still in master branch. So let me just delete this. Let me delete this. Let me just say this is master branch actually. We are still in master branch, save. So let's go back. We are in master branch because I just switched. Then now that we're in master branch, let's do git status. Oh, capital letter. Git status. So we have some changes we are yet to commit. So let's commit this first before we proceed. Git commit m. Let's call this change to master branch. Remember what I taught you? You can stage and commit at the same time. So let's do that once and for all. Stage and commit. Change to master branch. Yeah, perfect. So git status. Yes, nothing to commit. Working tree is clean. So let's clear and do that again. I want you to understand that. So, remember, we are on the master branch and this file is saved in the master branch. But if I go to, okay, let me switch. We are still on master branch. So if I put the index there, it's still what it is, master branch, right? So now, let me go over and switch to the new test branch. So git switch. New test. So we've switched to the new test branch. So let's copy the file. Everything here now is for new test. So let's bring it over. Let's check what is in index. As you can see, there is nothing here. So because it is still at the stage where it was before we made the changes. So let's check the status for the new test branch, git status. So you see on branch new test, nothing to commit, working tree is clean. Now let's do what we did previously. This is the new test branch. Save. Git status. Now let's commit it. Git commit added test to other branch. Perfect. Git status. So everything is clean. We are on master branch. To confirm again, let's check it out. Master branch. Now let's switch back to, we are on new test branch. Now let's switch back to master branch. Git switch master. We've switched to master branch. Now let's open the index file to be sure that we are on master branch, right? Take note of this. And as you can see, it has changed. So you see, we have two different working files. We have a different index for new test. We have a different index for master. And that is what you need to know. So as you can see, I can do all the work I want to do on the new test branch, and it's not going to affect the master branch. But when I'm ready, when I'm done with all my changes, I can now move all the changes from the new test branch to master branch. And how do you do that? You say Git Merge new test. That's the one we want to merge. And as you can see, it's telling you Git merge, auto merging index conflicts contents because merge conflicts in index HTML. Now, this is what you need to know. The reason why you have conflicts is because we were working on the master branch before we opened the other branch. So we've made changes to master branch before we change to the other branch. So what you need to do is just, if it's not important, all you need to do is just to fix the error. You fix the test on your on your other branch by updating the content on one of the branches together, or you delete the branch entirely. So the point, what you need to know is that when you are working with this file, I wanted you to see this. Auto merging may not work because somebody has made changes to your main branch while you are still working on the other branch. Naturally, your other branch is supposed to be where all your changes should be made. Then you combine it with what you have on your index or on your master branch. And if we check, the issue is because on our master branch, we had more than 2 lines, and on the other one, we had more lines. So let's get the merge to work, right? So if you take note of this place, we are now in a new view called master merge. And master merging is trying to tell you that it is merging 2 files together. So let's go. Everything here is currently for master merging, every file here. So let's open it in our notepad so that we can see where the conflict is. And as you can see, this is the conflict. So it's telling you that this was the previous test and this is the updated test. So all we need to do is just to delete till head and remove this and save and go back to our file, to our editor. It seemed the save was not updated. So I'm just going to delete it again. Then you remove the new test at the bottom, then save. Then what you need to do next is just to commit it. So git commit a m and message updated test again. And that is it on Git merge and Git branching. And now that we are done with that branch, the next thing we can do is to delete that branch since we don't need it anymore. So let's check the branches that we have currently. We have 2 branches, master and new test. Let's delete the new test branch. Git branch d new test. And branch has been deleted. Let's confirm that git to list all the branch that we have, and you see we are just left with 1 branch. And that is pretty much everything on Git on your computer. We will be going into GitHub in the next section. So for you to make use of GitHub, you have to go to the website GitHub and sign up an account. So I'm going to show that to you in the browser now. So like I told you, we have to visit github.com. If you don't have an account already, just click on sign up and pretty much run through the registration. But I already have an account. So if your account is set up, just log in and click here to create a new repository. Let's call this repository Gitman. Description, you could add anything there. README, Git ignore, we have one already. So just create repository quickly. Now, Git is now showing you how you can access this folder. And all you need to do is just, so if you're creating your repository from scratch, you can use this one. But because we were already working on the file in our local computer, so all we need to do is just to use this. So you copy the first command, Git Bash, and paste it. Sometimes you may have this issue, and that is because this origin can be changed. Origin can be changed to anything else. It's just a name. So I can call this Gitman again. Gitman. And as you can see, that worked. The next step is to go back there and copy this. Paste. So this goes to our branch master. If yours is main, you use main right here. Mine is master. Then last but not the least, you go back and copy this again. Take note, you also have to change the name. Yours may work directly by just copying and pasting, but mine seemed to be having an issue, so I had to change origin to something else. So Gitty man and paste. Enter. And this is going to copy all the files in our computer to GitHub. As you can see, it's completed. Let's see what we have in our code. Let's refresh. And as you can see, our code has been updated. If I open index, you can see what we have here, right? If I open recipe, we still have our code. So we've been able to push our local folder to GitHub. So right now, everything we do on our local computer can also be added to GitHub straightforward, like immediately. So let's make an edit to this. So let's say we are yet to push this to GitHub. We are to push this to GitHub, and let's update this to, we have now decided to push this to GitHub. Save. But let's check the file we have on GitHub, index.html. As you can see, we don't have the new test we just added on GitHub, right? No problem. We are going to push it to GitHub now. And how do we do that? Git status. You see, we have on stage file. The next thing for us to do is to commit. So Git commit, commit all, message, and we call this our first GitHub push and change. And enter. So now that has been committed, right? Now that it has been committed, the next step is for you to push it to GitHub. So you use git push all -- all, and that's how you push all to GitHub. Enter. And everything has been pushed to GitHub. But let's confirm that. Remember what we have here and what we have on our local computer. We have now decided to push this to GitHub, and it's not on GitHub. So let's refresh the page and see if it's there now. And see, it has been added. We have now decided to push this to GitHub. Let's go to the main page of the code and see. Can you see the commit we added, the message, our first GitHub push and change? And that was what we have here, our first GitHub push and change. It has been added to GitHub. Now, before I close this lesson, there is something else you need to know. What if you want to copy a code from GitHub to your local computer? That's very, very simple. All you need to do is just come to your local computer and create a folder where you want the code to be. Let's call this from GitHub. then you enter into that folder. As you can see, it's an empty folder, right? So go to GitHub and click on this code. There are 3 ways in which you can get a code from GitHub. You can download this straight to your computer, pretty straightforward. You can open it with GitHub Desktop, but I prefer to use HTTPS. So click on HTTPS and click on this copy. Now that link has been copied. Go back to that folder. In the address bar, type Git Bash. Enter. And now to download that file to your computer, all you need to do is say git clone and paste the link. Enter. And that will do it. So now it is done. Let's check our folder. And now we have a new folder called Gitman, and it has copied all our files or downloaded all our files from GitHub to our computer. Now we can work on it and send it back to that GitHub repository. So I believe you've been able to learn a lot from this video by running with me, by working with me, and by watching, typing, coding, and writing with me. It was a pretty very long one, and I enjoyed it, and I hope that you enjoyed it too. So I'll see you in the next lessons. But for now, stay sharp, stay funky, and stay coding. Precious out.